Appreciate the cough. You look instead of reading. You looked. If you looked instead of reading chat, I did look. I just didn't see it. Oh, why did I exit computer, bruh?
Westgate. That'd be in here.
No.
Yeah, weak, kind of weak. So, but overall, there's so many fun and good parts. Like I'm not trying to be like nitpicky. It's just like I felt like I wanted a little bit more about certain parts of this. Like when I finished it, or like as I was going, I was like, oh, I hope this isn't it for that, or like. That was overkill. But like I just felt like a tiny. Where? Oh, hello. I've felt a little bit like just missing a tiny bit. Like I said, the final boss, and just like overall, maybe one more for Grace or something a little more for Grace. I don't know. Yeah, but on Insanity, I mean, of course on Insanity it's gonna be more challenging, so maybe it's more, but, yeah. Grace and Liam parts were too separate. And then I felt like Grace was left out from, like, the final boss part. It would have been cool if we somehow worked together, or came, like... Even though, I mean, she is the one who went and releases and does all that, but, like... somehow more merged. But I guess it's... I don't know. Just, like, little tiny bits. Like, but I'm not... I still...
Where Gottfried comes in, and there's a Maltese Grateful Dead, surround sound somewhere in the car.
Does he know how you did your trick? Based on all that mumbo jumbo?
You know, these guys are literally the best, and this has been amazing, so thank you.
Thank you.
That's your card.
That is my card.
Back and forth. I expected, which I guess it's not really.
Let's talk about Abilify. Hi, I'm Dr. Yosef. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. I used to work at the FDA and I've worked in a number of pharmaceutical companies. And I tell you the things that your doctor may not have told you about your psychiatric medications. So the main things with Abilify is it's used for bipolar and schizophrenia. Its overall effect is one of emotional constriction and blunting, which can actually be really helpful if you're having very disturbing paranoia and agitation and a lot of those problems. However, the number one thing that I see happening with Abilify is that it can cause drug-induced agitation, sometimes known as akathisia. People take Abilify sometimes and it can be really stimulating for them. And essentially they just get worse. So you need to be really aware of this risk if you're taking Abilify. The other thing, like with all antipsychotics, is that it can cause something called tardive dyskinesia. This is a movement disorder which may not go away if you develop it. Let's talk about Abilify. Hi, I'm Dr. Yosef. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. I used to work at the FDA and I've worked in a number of pharmaceutical companies. And I tell you the things that your doctor may not have told you about your psychiatric medications. So the main things with Abilify is it's used for bipolar and schizophrenia. Its overall effect is one of emotional constriction and blunting, which can actually be really...
In today's video, we're going to be talking about my secret weapon, Abilify. And this is in response to one of our viewers who asked us to make a video specifically about Abilify. If you would like your mental health care questions answered, don't forget to type that in the comment section below, because it's our goal to continue helping you on your mental health care journey. So without further ado, here we go. So the first thing that you need to know about aripiprazole or Abilify is, what is Abilify? Well, Abilify is an antipsychotic or an atypical antipsychotic that first came out in the United States in 2002, and it revolutionized the treatment of psychotic disorders, specifically schizophrenia, because it was the first atypical antipsychotic to use partial agonism on dopamine and serotonin. And you're probably thinking, well, what's all that? Well, being a partial agonist, Abilify can actually increase dopamine in areas of the brain where dopamine is too low, or decrease dopamine in areas of the brain where dopamine is too high. So it goes in there and works in both ways, increasing and decreasing these neurotransmitters, both dopamine and serotonin, to a point to help balance it all out. And so then it was found to be very useful to treat those cognitive symptoms of schizophrenia, the negative symptoms of schizophrenia, which are like the flat affect, the lack of motivation, no energy, and the positive symptoms of schizophrenia, such as psychosis, when you have hallucinations, such as hearing voices or seeing things. So Abilify was found to treat the spectrum of schizophrenia, and then also noted to be very useful in the treatment of depression, which is where it becomes the psychiatrist or the mental health provider's secret little weapon to help treat treatment-resistant depression. Which brings us to number 2. What is Abilify used for? Well, Abilify is FDA approved for treatment-resistant depression when used adjunctively with antidepressants, and also used in the treatment of schizophrenia and bipolar I disorder, acute mania, and mixed episodes of bipolar I, and also used for irritability and autism spectrum disorder, and it's used for vocal and motor tics found in Tourette's syndrome. Abilify also has an injection form of the medication. It has a short-acting injection that's used for agitation in schizophrenia, and it has a long-acting injection that's used for maintenance treatment of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. However, in my clinical practice, I focus on the treatment of anxiety and depressive disorder, and so for the purposes of this video, we're going to be focusing on the oral use of Abilify and its treatment for major depressive disorder. Now, off-label uses also include bipolar I depression, which I do have experience with, and will use it with bipolar I depression adjunctively.
Each stroke forms a character. destiny. Only tomorrow. Storm of Blades! No cause for sympathy! They come!
been slain. An enemy has been slain.
Azakana trap their victims in a vicious cycle of emotion. Doubt breeds doubt. Fear breeds fear. And the Azakana feasts.
An ally has been slain.
Now, there is only
Let's talk aripiprazole, or Abilify. I'm Sophie Charlotte and I have bipolar disorder. I've started this channel, again, to make mental health videos about bipolar disorder. I plan to make videos on all my medications, medications I've been on, and my story, etc. So let's get into the video. What is aripiprazole? Aripiprazole, or Abilify, is an antipsychotic, a second generation antipsychotic. By second generation I mean that it is part of the group of antipsychotics that was essentially the second generation, hence the name. You had a lot of different antipsychotics which were made first of all, and then they sort of reformulated, tried to change things based on side effects, things like that. I don't know the science completely, obviously, but it was basically the second lot. Because of that, they're also known as atypical antipsychotics. It's mainly used to treat things like schizophrenia or bipolar mania, but also can be used as a mood stabilizer. It's been shown to also be used for things like borderline personality disorder, BPD, or emotionally unstable personality disorder, EUPD. It's also been used for depression, PTSD, and schizoaffective disorder. So what's the usual dose of aripiprazole? Its starting dose is about 10 to 15 milligrams, and it can go up to 30 milligrams a day. But the usual dose range is 10 to 25. What are the common side effects? So you can have things like restlessness, constipation, diarrhea, fun ones, headache, insomnia, blurred vision, like a lot of the other medications. They all have pretty similar side effects, but it can also cause things like a tremor, which I will get into. It's shown to also have a lower risk for weight gain, which is obviously, or if you didn't know, with antipsychotics, that's a very common side effect, is weight gain or weight changes, but normally weight gain from a little to a lot. And they say that aripiprazole is on the not least likely. There are some antipsychotics now that are shown not to change your weight or make any like sort of increases, but with aripiprazole, it's a bit lower than some of the other ones, which is always a plus. So why was I prescribed aripiprazole? At the time, I was coming to the end of a hypomanic episode. I was fairly aware that that's what was happening, and it was pretty much maybe a month before I actually got my formal diagnosis, but I knew that was what we were working towards because I was filling out mood diaries and things like that, which I will get more into when I do my story or diagnosis story video. So I got put on it for hypomania, and yeah, that's the main reason. It was just for that. So how has it helped? For me, as soon as I went onto it, I noticed a massive difference. Within 2-3 days, I felt my hypomania, just starting to come down and level out. And it was so strange because I felt like that for, I don't know whether it was weeks or months, it's sort of blurred into one. And I don't have the best memory of it, I never do. But it just, I think it was about 3 days, and I was like, wow, my head feels really clear, nothing's racing anymore, it's all just calm, and it's like all the loud noise in my head had just been shut off. And when I started it, after I felt like this, I nearly cried just through relief, because it just made everything manageable, and it just put me back into a stable place. It took a couple of weeks to fully get me back to that stable place, but it was those 3 days that I just noticed a huge change, and I never thought that was possible. It was mad. In case you're interested, I'm currently taking 20 milligrams, though I think it should be upped, because at the time of filming, although you might not be able to tell, I am in a hypomanic episode. And I think it is slightly moving towards a mixed state, which I don't want, but the irritability is almost equivalent, which is good. I am very much having to slow down my speech and everything else because it's very, very difficult, especially trying to make sense when filming this and not come across as too waffly or just going off on a million tangents. But I started at 10 milligrams and was it 10? Yeah, no, I started at 5 for a week, then I went up to 10. I stayed on 10 for probably about a month, then went up to 15 for about 3 weeks, and then I went up to 20, and I've been on 20 for about a year and a half now, so it has worked, but I'm having breakthrough episodes, which makes me think it needs to be a little bit higher. What side effects have I experienced? Now, the main one for me is one that's been extremely annoying. I don't think I'll do it right now, but I get a really bad tremor in my hands to the point where I'll be holding my phone and if I try and take a photo, for example, I'm just doing like this, trying to hold my phone, and it's just, I can never get a good photo or anything like that because my hands are so shaky. Some days are better than others. If I'm tired, it's always worse. But I've recently been prescribed a medication called Kemadrin, which is used to help with tremor, stiffness, all the things that might be a side effect from an antipsychotic. And I have to say,
are you considering starting aripiprazole for depression? Here are 6 essential things you have to know to make an informed decision. My name is Matthias Hartmann. I'm a board-certified psychiatric physician assistant working full-time in psychiatry, and I'm here to bring you the facts so you can make informed decisions regarding your mental health care. First off, let's go over who can't take aripiprazole. Well, if you have an allergy, you can't take it, but that's really the only contraindication. Even if you have kidney or liver problems, it should be okay to take. Next, let's go over how aripiprazole works. And it's a very complex mechanism. It has many, many different mechanisms. We'll go over them briefly here. It's a D2 partial agonist, which means it boosts dopamine in certain parts of the brain where it's low, and it decreases dopamine in certain parts of the brain where it's too high. It's also a 5-HT1A partial agonist. 5-HT just means serotonin, so you can think of serotonin 1A. 1A is a specific receptor. It's a serotonin 1A partial agonist. And it also blocks several serotonin receptors, including 5-HT2A, 5-HT2C, 5-HT7. It has actions at D3, a little bit unclear how it works at D3. And it also blocks alpha-1 adrenergic receptors, which may cause dizziness if you get up too fast, and that's known as orthostatic hypotension. Next, let's talk about the efficacy and dosing. How well does aripiprazole work, and how do we dose this? Well, let's go over the FDA approvals first. Of course, it's FDA approved for major depressive disorder as an augmentation agent. That means it's used in addition to a standard antidepressant like an serotonin reuptake inhibitor, like Lexapro or Zoloft, for example. It's also FDA approved for several other disorders as well: bipolar maintenance, acute or mixed mania, schizophrenia, autism, irritability, or Tourette's. And it's often used off-label for many other psychiatric conditions. Off-label just means it doesn't have FDA approval. So how do we dose this? Well, we start at about 2 to 5 milligrams daily and increase by about 5 milligrams a week, but it really depends. The usual dose range for major depressive disorder is between 2 to 10 milligrams daily, and the max dose is generally 15 milligrams daily. Next, let's go over some guidelines, specifically the Canadian Network for Mood and Anxiety.
Hey everybody, welcome back to my vlog for today. I'm going to talk about akathisia again, just because I seen something on Twitter about it, and it made me want to look up a little bit more akathisia and Abilify. This one article. Article on Reddit is titled "Abilify is Killing Me." Excuse me. And I figured, I'd look into this Abilify some more, and I'm on Abilify currently, and I'm happy to say that they're slowly weaning me off of that. I spoke of that in my
Statistics show that about 1 out of 5 American citizens suffer from some form of mental illness every year. These illnesses run the gamut from depression to Tourette's syndrome. And with a market of more than 42 million people a year as their potential clients, Big Pharma hasn't wasted any time creating countless pills they claim are going to solve your mental health problems. There are plenty of medications available to do that, provide relief for people suffering from mental health problems, but there are also a wide variety of pills that have had their efficacy overstated by drug companies who are just trying to cash in on the latest blockbuster market that's opened. Abilify is an antipsychotic medication manufactured and marketed by Otsuka Pharmaceuticals and Bristol Myers Squibb. It's used in the treatment of schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, Tourette's syndrome, autism, and even depression. It's intended to help decrease hallucinations, or disorganized thinking, or mood swings, or depressive thoughts and tics. There are numerous lawsuits pending involving their antipsychotic medication, Abilify, that clearly show the drug can cause impulse issues in adults, such as chaotic gambling, shopping, binge eating, and hypersexuality. And with every one of those issues comes an entirely new set of problems for the people that are taking the pill. There have been reports of people losing everything by gambling away their homes, their cars, their retirement, due to the effects of Abilify. People are wrecking their home lives because of the side effects of Abilify. And what's so remarkable of all that is that the science appears to be absolutely solid, that Abilify is at the heart of the problem. There's no guesswork here. They've seen the statistics. They know the numbers. According to the lawsuits that have been filed against Otsuka and Bristol Myers Squibb, the company was fully aware of how their medication adversely affected a person's impulse control center. That's what it attacked, the impulse control center. And they completely failed to warn the public about these dangers, even though they'd warned in Europe long before. Documents point to the fact that the company had plenty of information to show that the problems here with side effects related directly to Abilify. They oversold the effectiveness of the drug and kept quiet about all the risks because they wanted a piece of the 42 million customer market. And they were wildly successful. In 2014, Abilify was one of the best-selling medications in the United States, bringing in more than $7 billion for Big Pharma. In spite of all the dangers that have been emerging in the public arena with this medication for more than 4 years, juvenile detention centers, if you can imagine, have been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every year buying and stockpiling Abilify so they can medicate juvenile delinquents rather than taking the time to try to rehabilitate. And those drugs are only increasing the frequency of the very behaviors that landed these children in trouble in the first place. But this is the new norm for Big Pharma in America.
Defeat.
A very unusual article appeared in JAMA Psychiatry. Professor Stephen Marder, who is a major figure in academic psychiatry, is a professor at UCLA, and he used to be the former editor of the American Journal of Psychiatry. This is the biggest journal in psychiatry, so he's kind of like elite level psychiatrist. And essentially what they published in JAMA, which is also a really big, well-read journal, he essentially says it's time to come clean about the side effects of antipsychotics. So what he says here is, this may be a time for prescribers to be more transparent about the problems with dopamine blockers. And then he drills down into several side effects, which until now have really not been discussed in mainstream psychiatry at all. So the first issue that he brings up is he talks about dopamine blockade and dysphoria. And essentially what he is saying is that antipsychotics can make people depressed and withdrawn. Quoting a study from
A patient today asked about Abilify or aripiprazole, a second-generation neuroleptic medication. Abilify is a medication that blocks dopamine 2 receptors, but it also has activity on other receptors as well, including several serotonergic.
Welcome back, Straight Talkers. Today I'm going to talk about the medication Abilify so that you can be better informed when deciding whether or not to start this medication. Abilify was approved for medical use in the US. Medication has a generic name and a brand name, and doctors will often use these names interchangeably. Typical or second generation aids. Add-on treatment for major disintegrating.
So today we're talking about Abilify, which is the brand name for the drug aripiprazole, a very interesting medication, very commonly used in psychiatry, and usually also used as an augmenting agent to other treatments as well. If you're new here, my name is Dr. Sil.
Do ovoga finala, nakon tog regularnog dijela prvenstva, do pogotka Anes Džafo, sve okrenut leđima, uvijek se izbori. Uspio, jeste, to će biti. je to prilika za Dragana Edija Marića. Do kraja 5 sekundi. 5 sekundi. Ja vjerujem da ste uživali u prikazanom, malom nogometu, prikazanom futsalu i možemo reći veliki rezultat za Hercegovinu. Taj su uistinu dostupni. Nakon osvajanja kupa, širokobriješki sastav dolazi prva utakmica. Sarajevo je to smanjilo prije nekoliko dana na 2-1 i sada pobjeda Hercegovine 3-2, a ukupno u pobjedama je to 3-1. Evo, ja vjerujem da ste uživali u prikazanom, malom nogometu, prikazanom futsalu i možemo reći veliki rezultat za Hercegovinu. Taj klub utemeljen je 2019. godine.
Rakić je naravno ekipu Čić još minuta kako bi sebi otežalo situaciju na tabeli. Nema puno još prvenstvenih kola do kraja, sama je završnica. Jedna i druga ekipa odlično je sačuvala ali ovaj put prava tamo. Još jednom kapitenski Slobodan Pejčić na svoj rođendan zatresa u mrežu Sarajeva. Evo sada prilike i pogodak u ranu. Još jednom kapitenski Slobodan Pejčić na svoj rođendan zatresa u mrežu Sarajeva. Evo sada prilike neverovatan početak utakmice ovdje u Brodu. Žen je na Ružičiću sa igračkom više uvijek Brod igra, ali to je dosta riskantno. Međutim, da sada prolazi 3-0 Stefan Rakić, pa je li ovo ljudi moguće? Tu su još u Jasmin u visokom jesnijem dijelu da je imao 20 Sarajeva, došao je timu Sarajeva Buden tim futsal Premier lige sa 22 gola i on je reprezentativac. Sada išao je na Edisa Bršu, on je ispred gola, izlazi Pejčić, zaustavio je sada loptu.
Different mental health conditions. Maybe your mental health practitioner mentioned Abilify, prescribed it already. And now you're staring at a choice for me because I take antipsychotic. Relatively reach for it. Typical more like a thermostat for your brain chemical. Balancing things for bipolar disorder to wider range of menstrual disorder medication to 4.5 to 1% of patients. 8% of folks, it can cause headache in its class compared to other low increases in menstrual is less weight, and labs need to be followed to make sure they're insulin sensitive long-term following. Under the age of 12 class of medication, side effects are relatively minimal. I use it across MedD, and of course can try Abilify. If we decide to try Abilify, we would check in often, or like you or I'm some of those. Like it, subscribe, and set.
Thanks for watching that. Again, over age 6 if they have aggression or mood swings or self-injury or temper tantrums. On the other hand, it would appear that probably somewhere around 80% of the drug is used incorrectly. It was originally developed by Otsuka Pharmaceuticals in Japan in 1995, and they partnered with Bristol Myers Squibb to further develop the medicine in 19...
There's a new emerging litigation at this point in time of other drug for patients with depression. Abilify, is it actually changes the receptors in the brain?
So today I basically had to leave my job. Struggled a lot with my medication.
Ever heard of aripiprazole? You might know it by brand name Abilify, and it's one of the most flexible mental health medications out there.
Alright, I'm schizoaffective and I take an antipsychotic. Let's talk about Abilify. So,
Abilify was a medication I took back when I still thought I just had bipolar disorder. It was an antipsychotic. It was the first antipsychotic I ever took, and I took it to treat a hypomanic depressive mixed episode. And I think it was like all the way back in 2017 that I tried it because I'd come back from a bunch of world travel.
What do you call a dog?
All right, I'm schizoaffective and I take an antipsychotic. Let's talk about Abilify. So, Abilify was a medication I took back when I still thought I just had bipolar disorder. It was an antipsychotic. It was the first antipsychotic I ever took, and I took it to treat a hypomanic depressive
I agreed to take the Abilify pills. I took 15 milligrams, and immediately, within like 20 minutes, I was falling asleep during the therapy session. I had vision issues.
Statistics show that about 1 out of 5 American citizens suffer from some